Welcome to ADRRN Dialogues, where we bring you real stories from communities living on the front lines of climate change. Across Asia, local organizations are leading bold, practical solutions to the challenges they face every day. And this series is about their ideas, their experiences, and what the world can learn from them. So today we are joined by members of MPBI, Avianto and Inda, who have been working on piloting inclusive sphere training, building disability inclusive capacity for climate resilience in Indonesia. And we'll be learning about the SEHATI project today. So tell us a little bit about MPBI and help us understand what the gap in the disaster preparedness landscape that this project is trying to fill.
My name is Avianto Amri. I'm from the MPBI. I'm the chairperson of MPBI. We are a membership-based organization, brings together first people from civil society organizations. We have government employees, academics, practitioners, and other humanitarian actors that have interest and passion on disaster management in Indonesia. For over 2 decades, MPBI has focused on strengthening community resilience and promoting locally led disaster risk reduction. So over the years that we have seen on disaster risk management in Indonesia, one gap that we continue to see that is that disaster preparedness systems are often designed for persons with disabilities, but not with them. In many emergency settings, persons with disabilities are still treated primarily as beneficiaries rather than contributors, leaders, trainers, or even influencing the decision-making process. So that's why this project tries to address the gap that by moving beyond symbolic inclusion, we wanted to create a model where even person with disabilities and organization with people with disabilities are can be directly involved in shaping humanitarian preparedness and response, understanding standards like SPHERE, not only to protect themselves during disasters, but also to help improve the overall quality and inclusiveness of humanitarian response for everyone.
Avianto, you talked about the sphere standards. So for listeners who are new to this, what are the sphere standards about, and why does it matter that they be made more accessible to persons with disabilities as well?
Sure. The SPHERE standards are essentially one of the world most widely recognized global references for quality and accountability in humanitarian response. They provide minimum standards for areas like shelter, water and sanitation, food security, and health services during emergency, as well as the core humanitarian standards that applies to any humanitarian intervention whenever disaster strikes. The important thing is that sphere itself is built around dignity and the principle that all people affected by disasters have the right to assistance and protection. But in practice, many persons with disabilities are excluded from accessing those standards or uh, receiving the results in using the standards, not because the standards are wrong, but because the system itself are often not accessible or not inclusive enough. So that's why making sphere inclusive means translating humanitarian principles into real accessible procedures, mechanisms, and also including having meaningful participation and representation.
Right. Avianto, you had brought up earlier the fact that people with disabilities are often among the group who are first targeted in terms of response when disaster strikes or in terms of disaster preparedness, but they're seldom part of the process of planning those strategies and approaching how to look at disaster resilience from their perspective as well. So why do you think that gap has persisted for so long? And what has it actually cost communities?
Uh, Very interesting question. I'll start first and then I'll pass this to my colleague Inda, as this is mostly her areas of expertise or experiences. But I think maybe I'll start with historically, disaster management systems have been very response driven and very uh, the push is to move fast, and operationally focused. In many countries, including Indonesia, preparedness planning has often prioritized only focusing on logistics, how to make sure goods are delivered from point A to point B, focusing on restoring critical infrastructures and sometimes coordination systems, but not necessarily meaning that this is where you can have like meaningful participation, accessibility, consultation, etc. So I think that's where we have the gaps. And I'll pass this to Inda for more. Over to you, Inda.
Just to add what Anta already mentioned before, actually I think the root cause of this issue is because like many service provider didn't realize that every community is unique, not only person with disabilities, yeah, but also every community like elderly, pregnant woman, for example, and each of them actually have specific needs while a disaster happens, and because this is not recognized, so then the service provider uh, tend to only giving whatever they can give without realizing that there is some specific needs that might be some people with disability, for example. Just as simple as how to evacuate them during the disaster happen, for example. It's not as simply as just take them, from one place to another place without considering their dignity, for example, or considering their safety. This is also happen because they never ask and never try to involve the specific groups about what is your need,
Mhm.
what is the importance of doing this, and what is the advantage, for example, for doing this and that. So this is what happened previously, and also in Indonesia, what is happening actually is the organization of person with disability. Many of them are still focusing on development issue, not yet working in the disaster issue yet. So actually, the voice is not really loud until I will say I don't know, maybe the last 5 years, I think, yeah. But before that, not really many person with disabilities actually really actively involved in the decision making of the disaster management as a holistic approach in Indonesia. Over to you.
So often, people with disabilities are positioned as beneficiaries in the disaster response mechanism. But this project that you've undertaken, it looks at repositioning people on the fringes as co-creators, as important decision makers, and looking at how to address disaster response. What does that shift actually look like on the ground? What does that inclusivity really mean when it comes down to it?
Well, on the ground, the shift becomes very tangible. For example, participants with disabilities were not just only discussing about barriers; they're also can produce solutions. They can analyze based on their experiences, reflecting on their communities, and then they can help us to review any humanitarian assistance that has been provided, like uh, water sanitations, emergency latrines, emergency shelters. What has been its look like on the evacuation centers. So identifying accessibility gaps in these sectors, discussing communication barriers during emergencies, and also how they can contribute directly to recommendations based on the SPEAR standards. Some participants also shared experiences from previous disasters. The shift matters because it's a lived experience that is providing the unique expertise into the ecosystem. When persons with disabilities are involved as co-creators, we believe that it can be more effective, it can be more realistic, it can be more accountable, it can be more human-centered, and in the end, resilient is about the whole community. It's not just a particular group. So we need to have that embracing inclusivity to ensure that we are making it a sustainable, resilient. And inclusive design is not just about uh, servicing the people with disabilities. Inclusive design meaning that all people will be able to access these services or humanitarian assistance. So it's about the whole community on that side.
Inda, if there's anything
Yes.
you would like to add to this?
Yeah, I think I will answer that question by saying that nothing about us without us. Yeah, that's basically like the jargon that we need to strongly recommend in every of our action. We cannot say that okay, talking about people with disability, how is their resilience during the disaster and everything, without involving them into the process. Yeah, so basically that's all. Nothing about us without us.
Absolutely. I think giving all communities, giving everybody the voice to participate is fundamental to any resilience movement, whether it's climate or any other movement across the world. You've talked about some of the interesting perspectives that people with disabilities are able to bring into this particular sphere. What is something that was new or surprising to you in terms of what they were able to look at from a different perspective?
So, from my perspective, what's new? Uh, Maybe not yet on the impact side or the result side, but also even the process itself, doing on the training, making it a training to be inclusive, is very interesting journey. So it's not just about having people with disabilities in the training, but we are mixing participants of people with disabilities and non-disabilities. That itself creates a different level of dynamic where we need to make sure that uh, all participants understand and respect and appreciate each other characteristic. They know how to interact well with one another, and that is also even an interesting learning experience. So we know that in the beginning we need to have like sensitization process. We need to make sure that they know what the ground rules, the do's and don'ts, and things like that. In terms of the methodology itself, it's we tweak the curriculum, the material to be more inclusive. We have case studies that mix element between real case studies and that has elements of person with disabilities, and also the how we are delivering it as well, making sure that it can be understood by all participants. We have a quite a varied disabilities. We have people with disabilities that cannot see, have hearing impairments, have physical disabilities, and also psychological, intellectual, and mental disabilities as well. So that kind of makes it also very interesting to know and adjust what would be the best delivery method. And of course, we're learning as well. Uh, uh, and the before we do the training, we have a series of consultation as well with the organization with people with disabilities. We consult with them. They help us co-designing the training itself, and then we also have a reviewer team as well who are experts on training, experts on sphere, experts on people with disabilities. So that kind of series, it looks like we are doing simple 5 days training, but the process itself is a very interesting journey for us. So I hope Indah, you can complement that.
Yes. So the new things that I learned from them actually is about they adjust very well. That's quite surprising me actually because we anticipate a lot of things for the training. Yeah, we anticipate the venue, we anticipate the access, the toilets, and everything like small little things we try to anticipate. But again, the location of our training is not really ideal for the accessibility. Yeah, unfortunately, there is one two things that miss and we kind like okay afraid how it can goes yeah with the very diverse participants in that time but surprisingly they're adjusting very well in that time so for example I will say for the venue for example on the first day we got like very small spaces we're not expecting that actually but then some participant who is using wheelchair they're the actually we think that they will be the most disadvantaged group regarding the limited space. Yeah, but then it's okay by now. I will sitting here. So whenever I need mobility, I will not, closing the access for the others, for example. and they adjust themselves very well. And also for the participants from humanitarian organization, which is they're not having any barriers or disability, they actually can also cope themselves very well into the groups. Yeah, even some of them learn how to speak sign language, for example, how to use sign language, for example, and then they really learn in details about how to interact with people with disabilities, which is really good because this is then actually open their perspective regarding, okay, there is some specific needs that we need to concern regarding the language, for example, regarding the access of the information, yeah, and how they assist their partner, the other participant with the site barriers, for example, like how to serve the food, and this makes them learn about how they should serve the community during the disaster when they are a service provider. Yeah, and that's quite interesting actually.
Absolutely. I think it's very interesting that you brought up the kind of cooperation and adaptability that different groups are able to bring together because again, in the landscape of disaster management, that is fundamental. Those are pillars upon which preparedness and then action and resilience is built. So it's very interesting to hear that. I'm curious about how also this particular quality that you've mentioned, the adaptability among persons with disabilities, would then translate into what they actually bring to the table in terms of their perspective and their insights into the discussions that you're having with them.
This is a series of activities that we are bringing in. The main goal that we want to have at the end of this program is that we want to have like more sphere trainers or people that has the capacity to train sphere that come from person with disabilities. So it's not just about this 5 days basic inclusive training, but after this we will have like an on-the-job training exercise where we will bring them again to an actual disaster site and then review, reflects, and assess actual programs. For instance, like emergency shelters, cash assistance, or mobile clinics that humanitarian organizations are doing, and then they can provide their insights. And then after that, after the on-the-job training, they will go back home again. They will have like several refresher course, and then we will have a training of trainers for Sphere, where they can be certified as a Sphere trainer. So going back to your question about adaptability and what the people with disabilities brings, uh, we believe that this whole series of activities can provide us with a good insights on their perspective, on their concerns, whether it's it for wash intervention, whether it's sanitations or shelter or health or food security, during those each of those trainings, on the job training and TOT, and also hopefully it's become sustainable where they can be part of the humanitarian communities, not just as a consultative group but also as one of the main actors in the main discussions on that. And maybe Inda can add more on the training that we had earlier. Over to you.
Yeah. So actually, like before this training, we have several trainings before, yeah. Just to make sure that the participant, especially from the person with disability, have clear understanding regarding this disaster management and everything about it, yeah. So actually, this peer training is one of the training that we give to them, which is the I think quite crucial one. So basically, before this, we have a gap when during the disaster response, for example, like the service provider would like to, give some services for them, but they don't know how to do that. In the other side, the organization of person with disabilities, as the representative of a person with disabilities, they also cannot join into the disaster management because they have no idea about the disaster at all, except that maybe some of them have experience to be the victim of the disaster, for example. But like during this process of those trainings and the capacity buildings and everything, we expect that we can closer the gap among the humanitarian actors and also the person with disabilities. So then they're more close to each other. That the person with disabilities or organization with for person with disabilities understand better about the situation, about the condition of disaster management in Indonesia. And then the humanitarian actors in Indonesia also understand better. Okay, there is some groups that need more attention on this. Yeah, for example. So by doing this, I think then each of us can start to link each to another. Yeah, and then to adapt what is actually happening at the moment to be more inclusive. Like there is some specific things maybe, but maybe also there is some like simple small things that we can do about it. So actually we try to closer the gap basically. Yeah.
When you talk about closing the gap and linking different communities together and cooperating, one of the questions we had was about if others were to replicate the model of training and engagement and inclusivity that you are undertaking, what should other organizations or individuals or communities, what should they unlearn before trying to replicate a project like this?
For the unlearned thing, I think we should realize that we cannot assume that people with disabilities only can receive the benefit of the humanitarian action, for example. Yeah, these things should be really unlearned from other humanitarian actors. That people with disabilities can be actively involved, can give valuable inputs, and can act as an actor, as a subject, not only the object of the humanitarian action. This is something that definite, because many people actually doubting when we start to talking about, okay, the involvement, the active participation and everything, like how can they be something like this, or even in the small community level, for example, the exercise, yeah, for evacuating, for example. Okay, don't involve with people with disabilities because it's too hard for them, for example. So we need to unlearn this among the participants. And the thing that is a must actually is to consult with them. Yeah, on how to deliver the training in accessible way, in inclusive way. In we consult a lot with them since the development of this the module. And also before we deliver the training, we consult a lot with them. We asking about what is your specific need during the training, for example, for the participant with mental health issue, they say, okay, I need some break time, like very only really break time, because they heard about how tense is the spirit transition, for example. So we ask them about this, and we respect their request. And then in the other case, if we not able to provide about their request, we communicate with them. So basically, their involvement, even to deliver the training, is, I think, is very important. Yeah. So please, Masanto, you want to add?
Um, I think just adding to that, if I'm an NGO person, when I'm preparing a proposal, disability inclusion is not just like a side quest or things where there's still room for spending more budget, then maybe let's do disability inclusion on that. So it needs to be at the heart of the program when you design, is that recognizing that there is huge chance that there is going to be people with disabilities in that communities. There is very likelihood that you need to modify your intervention because considerations of inclusion and accessibility. So I think that is the message that we want to convey when we want to make sure that we have a quality program intervention or an accountable humanitarian assistance.
You mentioned something very interesting, which is the doubt or the apprehension or the cynicism that other groups might have about inclusivity or letting the voices of the many come into the picture of how to go about organizing disaster management from communities. But was there a moment in time where it felt like inclusion wasn't just a checkbox, but something real, and that you could prove to people who had apprehensions that no, this is important work and this is at the core of it?
Yeah. Well, the whole project is designed with that kind of principle. That is why um we do a lot of modifications, we do a lot of adjustments based on our consultations with ongoing discussion with the organizations with people with disabilities and things like that. uh, I think we are very grateful that we have a good communication and strong support from the donors itself, recognizing that there could be modification and changes in our project design, and that allows us to do that pre-training consultation phase, do the workshop, do the co-design, and many things towards that. We recognize that they need to have basic training in advance before doing the training of Sphere. We in the original design, there's no on-the-job training activity, but then we are very fortunate that we have this grant from the ADRRN that allows us to do this on the job training. So I think that kind of flexibilities and in because we are doing that consultation with with the OPDs, so with the disabled people organizations, and allows us to make those changes. And I think that's has been a privilege and a learning process for us as well. Recognizing that our design is not perfect, obviously, but we strive to make it better, but based on inputs from others.
Thank you so much, Anto. Is there anything else you feel like you'd like to share about this particular project that could be helpful for our listeners?
I think that it's a lot of people thinks that, at least from my perspective, we do disability inclusions to benefit people with disabilities. But actually, the learning process so far is benefiting the non-disabilities as well. So it's also have equal benefit, mutual benefit. I think that is one of the aha moment from my side, recognizing that doing inclusion, doing proper consultations in appropriate way actually help us in designing a better project, designing a better intervention. It's not just about us providing assistance to the one who is most at risk, but also recognizing that we have a lot of things to learn. We have inclusion is for all of us. It's not just for the people at risk. And actually, collaboration do help us in making it better. This project itself is a combination of maybe 10 agencies just in preparing this series of activities. And that is because we know that each one of us has their own capacities, their own advantage, their own excellence. And we are very pleased that all of these things are complementing each other and making it a better project.
Thank you so much, Anto and Inda, for joining us today on ADRRN Dialogues and for sharing the work behind MPBI SEHATI project. I think this conversation has offered us all a very important reminder about inclusive disaster preparedness being not just about accessibility, but about ensuring that persons with disabilities are recognized as leaders, contributors, and co-creators within resilience building efforts in disaster management. And from adapting sphere training to building locally grounded models across Indonesia. I think your work highlights how inclusion can move beyond participation on paper to something truly meaningful in practice. And we really appreciate your words and insights today. Thank you so much for joining us.